Want to build your career with CMI confidence? Well, it all starts with the tools at your fingertips. CMI creates workplaces full of inspiring leaders with its on-demand resources, network of mentors and industry-leading accreditations. Search CMI Confidence today.
This session is recorded and will be available on the CMI website and YouTube channel. Join the conversation by using the live chat box for your questions and comments. We'll answer as many as we can during the Q&A.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Looking Outwards and International Mindset for Growth digital event. My name is Mary Bolawale, and I am an events coordinator at CMI. Don't forget to join the conversation by using the live chat box, and we'll answer as many questions as we can during the Q&A. I will now hand over to Kathryn Austin, the chair of CMI Wales Board, and Dr. Clair Doloriert, the HE lead of CMI Wales Board, to begin today's event.
Thank you, Mary. Diolch, Mary. Croeso cynnes I ddigwyddiad CMI heddiw.
Diolch, Claire. Welcome, everybody. We probably will have people on this line from international CMI membership, Wales, and probably global. So welcome, everybody that's joining us today. We've got a great session lined up for you today with some really interesting speakers. We're focusing on the sorts of things that you need to do and think about as a leader in business, and also if you're a student thinking about your career, in order to really maximise international growth opportunities. So we're representing the Welsh board here today, so there is a Welsh flavour to this, but it also applies, and hopefully some of the learning points you'll take from today's session will be valid wherever you're joining us from in the world. As I say, we've got three great speakers. We're going to start with Dr. Clair, who's going to be interviewing two different speakers from Bangor University, who will be exploring the broader world of economics and actually where the opportunities are to develop internationally. And then we're also going to do a bit of a deep dive into the sorts of behaviours and the ways that we need to act and think in order to maximise those opportunities. And then finally, we're going to hear from a speaker, Laurence Harris, who we'll introduce you to a bit later, who's going to give you his own personal experience of actually building a business internationally from Wales. So from being a West Wales-based farmer to setting up a business both in the Netherlands and the Far East. So it's going to be a really interesting case study to see what really happens in real life. So we're going to go from academia, theory, through to the practice of what really happens out there. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you across to Dr. Clair, who's going to talk to our first two speakers.
Thank you so much, Kath, for that wonderful introduction. So as Kath said, initially we're going to be hearing from the sort of academic voice, and we're going to be hearing from Dr. Edward Thomas Jones, who's a senior lecturer in economics at Bangor Business School. Hello, Edward. Lovely to have you here with us today. And also we're going to be hearing from Dr. Mahshid Bagheri, who's our lecturer in management at Bangor Business School as well. And welcome to our workshop today, Mahshid.
Hello, everyone.
So what we'll do initially is we're going to sort of take a zoom out, and in order to understand kind of the international mindset, I think it's really important for us to kind of understand the current context of Wales and also the UK as well, in terms of, you know, just how we're doing internationally and what the landscape looks like for internationalization opportunities. So let's switch over to Edward now, and we can take a dive in and have a look at some of the sort of economics and statistics relating to this. So Ed, could you talk a bit about, you know, what the current landscape is for Wales in terms of its internationalization? What is its outlook like?
Sure, it's incredible to talk about the Welsh economy as it is now. In the same way, when we're talking about the UK economy as well, it's been through so much. If we think back to 2007. It had to deal with the financial crisis, it then had to deal with austerity, it then had to deal with the uncertainty of Brexit, it then had COVID to deal with. It's had the cost of living crisis, the high inflation. So the economy's been through a lot. It really has been suffering. And when we're looking at the the latest data that we have for the Welsh economy or the UK economy as a whole, it's not really a surprise that we are seeing it struggling because it's been through so much. So yesterday we had the latest GDP numbers being released, and there was no surprise there that it was kind of flat. Economists had expected a bit of growth. When we're looking at unemployment at a UK level, we're seeing that greater than 4%. Similar kind of picture in Wales. Unemployment's a bit lower, but unfortunately the jobs that are here in the country aren't paying that well. Then that, of course, has an impact on people's ability to spend. Whenever we're talking about the economy, there's no getting away from inflation. And if we think back about a year, 12 months, and of course, we were talking about inflation being greater than 10%. We're now seeing it at normal levels, 2.3% for the UK. Main thing to remember here when we're talking about inflation is that while the inflation rate has come down, that doesn't necessarily mean that prices have come down. So again, businesses and consumers across the country are still struggling to pay for things.
So what does this mean really in terms of perhaps our managers, our entrepreneurs that are listening and are part of our audience today? Is it a good time to think about growing and going international?
Well, when we're talking about the Welsh economy, first of all, the businesses that we do have here, because they've gone through everything since 2007, first of all, we have to admire that they've been able to hold on and survive the economic shocks that we have seen. So there's clearly something about these businesses, something that they're doing right. They've got this correct attitude of just getting through things and getting business done. So first of all, we have to applaud them for that. Now, while the Welsh and UK economy, it is a bit damp. It is similar to the weather that we have here in Wales at the moment. It's a bit wet. That does not necessarily mean it's the same across the world. Now, if we think about some of the largest economies, the US and the Eurozone, what's interesting if we think back to the last quarter of 2019, before the pandemic, the UK economy has only grown 1.7%. In the Eurozone, we're seeing growth nearly 3.5%. In the US, they've seen growth greater than 8.5%. So while we're not seeing that growth here, there's plenty of opportunity elsewhere in the world. The IMF in April, they released a report saying where they expect to see growth. 9 out of the top 20 countries were in Africa. So it's important now for businesses, while the Welsh economy isn't performing as well as we would like, there are plenty of opportunities in other countries around the world, in particular in places like Africa, where we are expected to see rapid growth.
So a shrewd entrepreneur would look at where there's growth outside of the UK and target those specific markets.
Absolutely. And that's the mindset that we now need to see. We've seen these businesses, they've survived up until now. They've done a fantastic job. Now's the time to look at, right, where can I expand my markets? Which countries do I need to tap into? And really leverage the support services that we have here in Wales to be able to export and tap into these countries. Because it is a difficult challenge. When I'm talking about the US growing 8.7% since the start of the pandemic, going into that huge market, that is a bit of a daunting task. You can imagine a company wanting to sell to the US. Where exactly do they start selling their product? Do you go for somewhere like New York? We all know about the city that never sleeps and the excitement of being there. Risk with that is that if you start selling to such a large city, you're just going to be a very small dot in that large city. Yeah. Is it better to start targeting other parts of the country that maybe aren't as well known, but you can be a key player in those markets? So it's critical for the entrepreneurs, while they have that growth mindset and looking to export, that they do get that advice to tell them where exactly they should be selling their products. Also with Africa, we've got countries, Nigeria, Senegal, Rwanda, are the ones that are going to be experiencing rapid growth. Getting into those markets can be a bit complex, and that's why they need to reach out and have that support.
So two interesting things I think you've identified there. The first one I'd like to kind of hone in on is that, you know, countries like the US are doing well. And the second one is the support available for Wales businesses and Wales entrepreneurs. So if we go back to the first point, what is it about countries like the US, do you think, that makes them so successful?
There are many factors that influence the success of their economy. I think it's structured better towards that growth, but also that culture. Unfortunately, here in Wales, we do tend to have this culture where if somebody sets up a business and if that business fails, more often than not, the local community will look at them as failures, and you know, that's it along their entrepreneurial journey. In the US, I'm fortunate to have had experience of talking with a lot of entrepreneurs there, and the culture is very different. They will try to establish a business and they'll see how that goes, and then if that fails, they'll try again and again and again until it works. And it's a very different culture where failure, it seems to be a learning curve for them and not the end of the journey. And it's that kind of mindset that we need to adopt here, that let's give it a go. If it fails, let's learn from it. Let's try again and keep going until we get that success.
That's really interesting. So you're talking about resilience, learning from failure, and these are really important attributes, aren't they? And something that perhaps we can drill down with Mahshid as well. So in terms then of my second point, you know, what would you offer in terms of advice there or guidance there for funding that's available to entrepreneurs? I guess you have particular familiarity with the Wales context and what's available to Welsh-based entrepreneurs or Wales-based entrepreneurs.
Yeah, we're fortunate in Wales that we have both the Development Bank of Wales and also the British Business Bank through their investment fund for Wales, providing finance for businesses across the whole country. They are looking to support businesses that are looking to grow and looking to export their products or services across the world. Unfortunately, I know both institutions quite well and the fantastic work that they do. The critical thing is to talk with them. Finance can be a complex area, and sometimes entrepreneurs are not too sure what finance is suitable for them or if they're even eligible for their loans or investments. But what I always say is pick up the phone and talk with them. They're a friendly bunch, I can promise you that, in both the Development Bank and British Business Bank. They are fantastic people. Pick up the phone, talk with them, and see the different options there. They'll talk through different options with you. You do not have to take the product that they offer. You know, you can shop around, but the critical thing is to talk.
Yeah, and I think it can be intimidating initially for entrepreneurs to reach out and have those conversations, or even the thought of the paperwork that's involved, or you know, some of those sorts of hurdles can put people off.
Most certainly, you know, the paperwork itself can be sometimes horrendous, but also the decision: does somebody go for debt financing or do they look for equity financing? You know, these are very difficult ideas, first of all, to get your head around and understand which one is most suitable for you. And that's why it's important to talk to these institutions. So the Development Bank of Wales, that's wholly owned by the Welsh Government, and then similar with the British Business Bank, with the UK government there. So they're not in the same way like a private bank that we're used to seeing on the high street. These are government-owned institutions that are here to help us.
Fantastic. That's really useful and helpful advice. In terms of Wales then as a whole, what do you think is very sort of marketable about Wales? And, you know, what do we do well in Wales as a country that, you know, perhaps Welsh and Wales-based entrepreneurs can sort of leverage as part of their business?
Yeah, Wales is an interesting country. I'm fortunate I've had experience of working in other countries, and I've seen how those countries celebrate their entrepreneurs around the world and develop those connections. And that's something we have to do in Wales as well. First of all, celebrate the entrepreneurs that we have here, but also be more aggressive, perhaps, in developing the links and the Welsh people that have gone off to other countries and made a success of it. So, for example, one of the largest banks in the world, JP Morgan, if you look at their history, it's a Welsh bank. it's established in the US.
I'd never have known that.
But that's the issue that we have. We have, throughout our history, Wales has been innovative, it's been successful, and it's succeeded not only in Wales, but across the whole globe. We don't tend to celebrate these successes or even make those connections to remind these businesses that have been established around the world in different countries that their roots started here in Wales. And having those connections is critical if we want to be successful in exporting and growing our businesses here.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. So celebrate our successes, develop and build resilience, and access funding, I think, are the key sort of takeaways from what you've shared with us this afternoon. Okay, thank you so much, Ed. Let's move on then to chat with Dr. Mahshid, who will be sort of focusing on some of the aspects really that Edward has highlighted. And Mahshid, we've brought in already elements of kind of what an organisation needs and what managers and leaders need to support this internationalisation kind of mindset to help them thrive in the international marketplace. So in summary, what do you think that organisations that are successful in internationalising, what do they have that sets them apart from those organisations that don't quite make it or aren't quite as successful?
According to the characteristics that make the organisation being successful in foreign market, according to the theoretical perspective and empirical finding, one of the most important one could be adaptability and agility. So, these organizations, the managers are able to adapt quickly to the environmental changes, to the competitive market, and they are able to adapt their product, their services, their business model according to the needs and expectations of the customers in different countries. And they are more agile in spotting and taking the opportunities from different, foreign markets. And they are also able to build a strong relationship with, local experts in different countries, with, other stakeholders like suppliers, even with, other customers. So they know how to build relationship, how to have a strong network in different parts of the world. And talent diversity could be also important and can be considered as, one of the important characteristic of successful organization. They know how to attract and how to employ talents with different expertise from different countries and from different cultures. And proactiveness in a strategic planning is also important. Successful internationalizing firms are the firms who are proactive in inward and outward international strategy. So, it means that while they are developing an international mindset, while they are understanding their motive to internationalizing, internally, while they are preparing for engaging in international business activity internally, they start building relationship and forming alliances or deciding about the most appropriate entry mode to enter the foreign market. And, these are the important characteristics that many of the studies have shown. For example, one of our studies at Bangor University with a sample of 116 firms in the UK show that being agile and being proactive in identifying the foreign market opportunities could be one of the most significant characteristics of the internationalizing firms, particularly the SMEs, the small and medium-sized enterprises. They are, better in being, quick to identify the opportunities and to be able to adapt themselves to the, international market.
I think that's really interesting, and it kind of builds on what Edward has highlighted about this need for learning. And I think you're sort of adding to that this learning is sort of rapid. You know, you need to be flexible, you need to learn, you need to be adaptive, willing to change as well, because I'm sure, you know, if you're going in a certain strategic direction and based on new learnings, it's quite often hard to let go of the strategic direction that you were heading towards, but responding to that new learning and being willing and open to change and redirect the business, it's probably quite a scary thing to do and a brave thing to do in terms of an organization. But you've also identified diversity, and I think this is a really, not only a hot topic, but a really important issue of our current times. And by diversity, you've suggested, having a diverse workforce. What does diversity and having a diverse workforce then bring to an organisation that a homogenous or a sort of a workforce full of similar people, what that doesn't do? So how does diversity bring this internationalization mindset to organizations?
Yeah, it's actually a really interesting question, because it's really important for the companies to understand that and to identify how they can be more diverse. Because, while we are engaging in any types of international business activities, it means that even if we choose the most simplest type of international business activity, like just exporting your products or services in different countries without physically being there, but we are going to connect with people from different parts of the world. So sometimes a standardization doesn't work. We need to adapt our products or a strategy and our services based on different needs and expectation. And how we can do that? By learning from different cultures, by learning from, norms and values, across different countries. So because people are different in terms of their taste, their belief, expectation, etc. So when we are diverse, when we are comfortable with working with a diverse team, it means that we are welcoming people together and engaging cross-cultural teamwork, and to bring their different ideas, different expertise, different experience together, share with each other so we can learn together. And this is something that many of the studies have confirmed, that this is really important, having a diverse, people within the organization, employing people from different countries, from different backgrounds, can help the company to learn more how to, engage in internationalization, how to develop a good international business strategy, so they can learn about, for example, the local experts. And this experiential learning can also facilitate innovation.
I think this ties in nicely with Laurence's case study, who we're going to be hearing from later. But it's really useful as well, I guess. Diversity. If you have diverse workforce, you have access to diverse networks, which is something that Ed's also highlighted as being really important. So that's sort of a look at the organisation and how an organisation can kind of internationalise. Let's kind of pin it down a little bit further and have a look at then managers and leaders, because a lot of our audience here will be managers and leaders. How do managers and leaders need to be, and what skills should they seek to develop, perhaps through the CMI, in terms of strengthening their opportunities and their skill sets for internationalization?
Yeah, let's say cultural intelligence, to be honest. It's the most important thing, to be able to develop their, let's say, personal skills, to understand about different culture, as I mentioned, and their international orientation as well. The studies have shown that the managers who are highly international oriented are better in spotting and identifying any possible opportunities, and also to be able to analyze the threats. So they are proactive, they are always looking for the opportunities in foreign markets, and they are comfortable in working with, in different cultures, in different parts of the world, and they start think globally even from the start, even when from the inception, when they haven't started internationalizing. So they start broadening their horizon to expand their global perspective, which is really, really important. So they need to develop their, communication skill, collaboration skill. It's really important to, work as a diverse team to be able to enhance this skill, to understand how to identify the suppliers, the distributors, the customers, and to connect with them, to build a good network with them to be successful. Yeah.
I think a lot of what you've talked about are these soft skills, and I don't really like the word soft skills because it makes them sound a bit flimsy, but they're hugely important, aren't they? Cultural intelligence, the networking, and just so international orientation. Then is that what when you sort of describe international orientation as a skill, does that mean describe an individual that is constantly looking outside of their organization, outside of their home country for these opportunities, and they just have this propensity for doing that?
Yeah, exactly. Actually, it's really important even when before the company start thinking about the interim mode. So we can see that many of the times companies may start deciding about what type of internationalization strategy they follow. Is it okay to start from exporting or franchising or licensing, joint venturing, or even foreign direct investment? But even before that, they need to have a really good level of international orientation to identify the motive and what's their motive to do that, and also the trigger, so how they can facilitate this internationalization process. So these are happening even before the internationalization interim mode. So they need to be highly international oriented in looking for the external environment, scanning the environment, identifying any external factors that Ed has already mentioned about, many of them at macro level. So identify any of this factor, how this factor can affect our businesses, what's the nature of our business, what types of products and services we can offer to different parts of the world, what is our limitation, what are the challenges that we may face, do we have any financial limitation or non-financial limitation. So these are all talking about international orientation before we move forward to the next stage of actually entering to the foreign market. That is really important for the companies to consider when they start developing the internationalization strategy or a new business model. Sometimes this highly international oriented behavior can lead them to redevelop their business model. Or their marketing strategy. Sometimes the marketing strategy that they are currently using in the domestic market can't be applied in different country, in different with the different culture. So they need to develop another marketing strategy or a business model. So if they are highly international oriented, if they welcome both inward and outward international orientation, they are better in, identifying any of this factor and, moving forward to the next stage of actually entering to the foreign market with more confidence.
That's really interesting. And just before we move on to Kath, I'd like to ask, do you think this international orientation is a skill that can be improved and developed? Obviously we're academics in business schools. Is this something that managers can improve upon if they make an assessment that they haven't actually got much international orientation? Can they improve upon it? Can they learn?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. These are the personal skills that can be developed and need to be developed. We can just expand our global perspective and, question and challenge our assumption to have a better global perspective and to start thinking about how to develop our skill. Strategic thinking is really important here.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need to think globally, but act locally. When we are consider globalization, we need to understand how to act locally in different parts of the world, that we call it globalization. So these are all the skills that can be developed, and it's actually a learning by doing process. Internationalization is all about learning. So we engage in internationalization, sometimes step by step, incrementally, gradually, and we learn about market, we learn about customers, we learn about all the external factors. We may fail, but we can learn from it. So we cannot consider that as a mistake. We can consider that as opportunity to learn even further. So resilience is important, to be able to cope with the challenges and remain calm, remain positive and keep going. This is all about that, and we can learn how to develop all of these managerial behavior and personal skills to perform even better, to enhance our performance and our self-growth.
So resilience is coming up again. It's something that Edward mentioned, something that you've mentioned, and we have a new word of the day: glocalization. I love it. So let's hand over to Kath now. Thank you, Mahshid. And Kath's going to be hosting Laurence.
Brilliant. Thank you very much to our three doctors, Claire, Edward and Mahshid. That was really interesting. So we've heard a bit about the theory, and actually on that note, that piece about, reaching out and thinking internationally and seeking opportunities. I just wanted to let you know, we did a short poll earlier, and actually who was on this call and what they're doing. And 35% said that they're actually working internationally now. And when I look in the comments, we've got people from Sri Lanka, Malaysia, a couple of other places as well in the Far East. We've got somewhere in Africa. We've got Nottingham. So we've got all sorts of different locations represented on the conversation today. And obviously, you're demonstrating what we're just talking about. You're seeking opportunities, not necessarily specifically related to your country, but actually applied learning, no matter where you take it from, can be hugely valuable. And what Edward was saying and Mahshid was saying, they absolutely match up. That curiosity and wanting to learn is sort of key point. So on that note, I'm going to be talking to Laurence Harris, who's done this. So a very brave businessman who started off as a farmer, dairy farmer in West Wales. And for those of you watching that has no clue about West Wales and where we are in the world, we're on a tiny little speck of the map out west, if you look at the UK. And where we're based here, I actually live locally to Laurence. We're about just over 2 hours to the nearest airport. So if you are on this call from somewhere very remote in the world thinking, how the heck do I go international? Laurence is going to talk you through how he did it, not necessarily from a geographical location you would first think of as being a base from which to work. So without further ado, Laurence, welcome. Thank you very much for talking to us today. You went from dairy farmer to setting up an international brand. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and the Daioni Organic brand and how it all started?
Well, basically, it started when my son came back from the States, who now helps run the dairy farm. I'm still a dairy farmer, still a farmer at heart. And basically, we turned to organic production and found that it was price related. And we needed to get a better price for a primary product. So contrary to all advice, we three of us met in a bar in an agricultural show and took a decision to start up on fresh milk. And the advice given was not to take any serious decision when you're tired, emotional, or have had too much to drink. So we disregarded all of that and took a decision to go into fresh milk. And with that, we went and realized that it wasn't as easy as we all thought, that you were trying to displace milk on a shelf locally. So you got into lots of little wars with milkmen and people like that. So my other son, who lived in Hong Kong, we went out to see him, and I saw UHT, long life milk, on the shelf in Hong Kong, and wondered how we could get it there. So that's how we started all those years ago, and that's where we started. So that's how it was developed.
Just for the audience now, so Daioni, the sort of range of products that you sell now, you've got quite a broad range of still dairy-based products, haven't you?
It's all dairy-based, so it is a general commodity. So you are battling with the big boys. So we have to make a price point, and the point you made about West Wales is very valid in our sales pitch. That we're by the coast, we have mountains and green grass and fresh air and a bit of paradise. So we have a standard milk, long life milk, full fat, semi-skimmed and skimmed, and we have flavored milks, and we had coffee drinks, all long life that can travel.
So to the point that Dr. Edward was making earlier, you really thought about the USP. So the dairy from West Wales, it's fabulous because of the grass quality where we live, and that could be marketed in other parts of the world that maybe don't have that benefit, and also adding value to the base product. So where you could, I know, charge a certain amount for normal standardized milk, actually turning it into a coffee drink or turning it into a milkshake, you could suddenly charge a lot more for that. And
that's basically it. And being an animal product, there's a huge amount of paperwork to go with it. And that's what we found out from the very beginning. And that is a challenge in itself. And the timeliness of getting it packed, getting it shipped, and getting it to arrive, and hopefully being put in the lower decks of a ship so it doesn't cook on the top as it goes across the equator. It was all these things that we learned on our little journey.
So what I mean, again, sounds almost impossible. So what made you just take that leap? What made you go, okay, we can actually do this, we're going to do it? Was there a moment or an point of inspiration?
Well, madness probably, but being still a bit of a sportsman, you always try and go for the gap and see where other people are not prepared to go. And it actually coincided with certainly in China, with a melamine contamination of milk powder. So everybody was really scared in the Far East of local milk being contaminated. So this was a new organic product coming from Europe, and just put a British double-decker bus and a telephone kiosk, and lots of stuff like cheeses are being sold out there with integrity and a supply chain that is well thought of in Asia. And so that's how we kicked it off, really.
So we did actually have a question coming through from one of our listeners who sounds like they're trying to work out what the opportunities are in their part of the world. And I'm not sure we're going to be able to specifically answer what the opportunities are in South Asia, but maybe the advice that we could give them is that, a bit like yourself, Laurence, is trying to work out what are the gaps, what are the USPs that are marketable internationally, and then how do you package that up and how do you build your networks? So starting with, what's the thing that's sellable outside of the immediate geography that you're in? It sounds like that's where you started.
Well, where we started and where we're at now are a little bit different. I mean, there are lots of learning processes on the way, like foreign exchange and cash flows, and the actual, is it doable? And can you get the right quantity packed? If you're having a product like milk packed, where you need minimum order requirements from the customer and from your processor. I mean, the machinery we need to carry out the process in the UK is hugely expensive. and it has to be done on contract, unless you have a bottomless pit.
Yeah.
So you have all the margins all the way.
Yeah.
And one of the first mistakes you make is to put your end product price, your retail price first, before working out who has what in the middle.
Yeah,
so
you actually have a profit at the end of all the work.
Well, exactly. As a primary producer,
Yeah. So again, Dr. Edward mentioned a couple of resources available in Wales. Obviously, they are Welsh specific, but I suppose it would still be true that in other parts of the world, probably the direction is go find them. So there will be some resources and things available to unlock opportunity. Did you work with anybody to help get this started, Laurence?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we're very lucky in the 4 home countries of the UK that the Welsh government provides an enormous resource for new products. I mean, there are 3 universities that research all sorts of products. One in North Wales, one in Cardiff, one down here near Llandyssil, and people coming in with ideas of food processing or food marketing to try out products will use these facilities, and we've certainly used those, and we certainly used them to go and sell our products at exhibitions and consumer and trade shows, and used the cash that Welsh Gov provided. I mean, that's where we had our first contact within China, was at a food show in Cologne, and without the resource from Welsh Gov, we wouldn't have been there in the first place. So we're very lucky in Wales.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, if you are an entrepreneur in a different part of the world thinking, where do I start? Unless you've already got a base business running, or, you've got an idea or an innovation that you're working on, if you're trying to work out, okay, starting with a blank sheet of paper, probably you could go wrong other than looking at the government growth strategies for your particular area, working out where they're investing in and supporting, and going, where does my idea align with all these things? Can I get support from somewhere? What do I need? How can I access it? So that sounds like you did that a bit.
Yes, I mean, that for us, that was the way. And with that, you get all the marketing and all the promotional and the brand development, and the whole strategy of starting up a new business is based on advice you get given by Welsh Gov, who have consultants. Dare I mention the word? But they are there, and they have been. The marketing department of Welsh Gov is really very good, and they have very professional people that help you along the way.
There will be similar elsewhere in the world. It's just finding.
I would think so. Yes, but they will help you get to the rest of the world. Yeah. The finance is something else eventually.
So just give us a short little example of something that went wrong. Because again, one of the things we've heard from both Dr. Ed and Dr. Mahshid is that things go wrong all the time. You shouldn't see them as an absolute failure. You've got to kind of pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and either restart or have another crack at it. So you must have experienced quite a few issues. So could you give us an example of one and what you did?
Well, yes, but first of all, to answer Ed and Mahshid, it's you have to be financially strong enough to carry on. I mean, I'm full of admiration for companies without, as we have, a farmer's equity, should we hit the buffers. For instance, we sent 2 container loads of milk to Hangzhou as the second order, and they arrived. These were 40-foot containers, 50,000 litres of milk, which we, as a startup company, having it produced in a factory, you virtually have to pay up front. Anyway, they ended up in Hangzhou, and the milk had virtually gone, not solidified, but became rather nasty.
You were selling cheese by the end of it.
Yes. So then there was a big discussion on where did it go wrong, and all this sort of stuff. So as it happened, I happened to be out in Hong Kong, just fortunately visiting my younger son. So I flew over and took samples from the product and had it took it to a lab to be tested again in Hong Kong, and it was found that it had overheated on the port in Hangzhou, or traveling down from Shanghai, I think. So, I mean, that is scary when you have lots of money tied up the other end of the world and the product has gone wrong. So that's where you learn. You know, from that, we put temperature loggers in all the containers. So you could see as it traveled for 4 weeks across the sea, you could see the temperature changes. Because the liability of it then ended up back at the processing factory.
So
that was a bit scary.
So you improved your processes, but you had to be quite courageous to give it another go. So,
well, yes, you do, and be able to afford it, because everybody, you know, it's not anyone's fault. You know,
you probably need to plan for failure. So if you are thinking about doing something, have enough in the locker to be able to deal with because they can happen. It sounds like. So we've talked from a behaviour perspective. We've talked about some of the things that Dr. Mahshid covered. So courage, resilience. It sounds like you've got those in spades, Laurence. What about sort of cultural competence? So we were hearing about that sort of learning, listening, being able to sort of fit into different cultures. How did you do that?
You have to be interested in people, I think. You know, definitely. I mean, we are now travellers, but you have to be interested into the culture of each individual country and try and understand the way the mindset is and what the culture is of that particular country. And the idea, we like to promote the organic side of our business, not as a cultural thing from the farm, and try and relate that to the organic, sustainable areas of the country you're trying to sell in and what you're trying to promote. I'm not a crusader for the organic movement, but I, you know, having been an organic farmer for 25 years now, and I fully believe in the concept. So it's something and you can link with people in different cultures, different parts of the world, because it's a global problem.
And it sounds like you really enjoy this. So the richness of different cultures and traveling and experiencing, you know, all the different ways of life. It sounds like it's become part of your job, I suppose.
Well, it has. And when you haven't been anywhere from 1971 until 1980 plus, I think, when Tom went to the States. No, not 1990. Sorry, we hadn't been anywhere. So all of a sudden, we're traveling at our age and traveling with a purpose, and it's really quite exciting, and learning new cultures. There can't be anything better.
Well, we're going to move across into sort of a joint Q&A and bring everybody back now, because I think there's probably going to be lots of cross questions that people want to ask. But again, I think, you know, Laurence is a great example, isn't it? It doesn't matter where you are in your stage of life or career. Actually, you can be brave and do something totally different or expand your current business. And probably the thing stopping you is maybe you. And therefore, if you can find the right networks, the right resources, in your case, you sort of networked through your family who were living in different parts of the world and made some really big decisions and learned from mistakes and all those things that we've heard about. But it's kind of like, you know, to Dr. Edwards' point where we started, are we our own cultural self-limiters? You know, we sort of scared of failure and it stops us from looking over the hedge to broader opportunities.
Or looking out the plane window, as I say. But we're all still learning. Everybody's still learning.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for that. So now we've got everybody back on screen. So basically, we're going to sort of open it up to the floor and have a look at some of the questions that come in.
We've got some good questions in the chat, Kath. There's one about, I think it's directed towards Dr. Edward. On the current economic landscape. I don't know whether we should look at that one.
So is that the one?
Yep. So I'll just read it out. Given the current economic landscape, what specific strategies can businesses in Wales adopt to tap into international growth opportunities beyond traditional markets? So it's a biggie. It's a big question.
It is in some sense, but then, you know, if we think about what we've been discussing today, you know, it's that for me is the talking, the traveling, the learning about different cultures that are out there, and just having that thinking, how would my product fit in these places? You know, that's the funny thing. Here in Wales, we're fantastic at talking with each other. You know, I've gone to visit family and friends, and crikey, the hours will go past so quickly over a cup of tea just talking away. But we need to do that at an international stage, where we go out, we talk to people to identify what opportunities there are, and then having just the confidence to go and do it. You know, learn from our mistakes. Let's not be afraid of failing. You know, just learn from it. Let's not make sure that we don't lose the farm when we do fail, but learn from that experience and continue to go out there.
I think that builds beautifully on what Laurence described, really, in terms of his experience and learning and reaching out and networking.
Absolutely.
Brilliant, thank you. We have another one here. This is actually for you, Laurence. This is just about your point of sale. So are you selling to supermarkets internationally, or do you have a more direct relationship with consumers?
We sell, we don't sell to supermarkets in the UK. We did, and found it difficult to make any margin out of it. We sell to retail chain. Pret-a-manger is our main customer in Hong Kong. They have all their coffee shops there. We sell basically to a distributor, and then they go out, and we support to various small chains of retailers, retail chains in Hong Kong. There are 3 major Park and Shop. Off the top of my head, there's about 3. So they're classed as supermarkets, but we do it through our distributor.
So basically, you know, again, you've had to change your model to fit a different market internationally.
Yes, and again, it's margin and time and the whole supply chain. And we have a small office in Hong Kong, and she supports all of that. But the main people to support are the guys who stack the shelves. Once you've got into a supermarket, I mean, there are key players, the bank manager and the shelf stacker, basically. One is once you get into a supermarket. And that's it, basically.
And how do you find out from a country that you're not based in all the time what the customer actually thinks about your product? So how do you get that information back to your business? Well,
the food shows, the trade shows that we go, and we've been all over the world, and you sample, you send product out, and you must remember there are expats everywhere. There are 500,000 expats who live in Shanghai, who have disposable income, because organic products are not cheap. So, and there are, as Ed says, I mean, the Welsh are everywhere, no more than the Irish pubs might, but I know Wales is everywhere.
Well, it's like if you're watching this, say, from Malaysia or another country, the same will be true. There will be an expat community in Wales, there'll be an expat community in all different parts of the world. So,
I mean, the world is a small place.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
And, you know, not only Morgan Stanley or whoever.
Yeah, I mean,
banks, you know,
it's sort of listening to the conversation today. It really has come back for me anyway, back to our own leadership and management behaviours and the way that we think. So all the things that you were saying, Dr. Mahshid, and that, you know, it sort of rests with us. You know, if we've got an idea, it's that tenacity, curiosity, exploration, thinking more broadly than you would ordinarily do, being able to adapt your idea to whatever the end market is, your aimed end market. And you know, it's never going to happen, is it? So, you know, Laurence made this happen due to his own personality and the networks he had. And so I suppose if you're watching this thinking, you know, how do I go and work in another country? It's got to start with that curiosity, hasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's going to start with curiosity. How we are, scan the environment, how we are how we can understand, or motivation, or how we can develop our skills, how we can develop our abilities to identify the opportunities and to analyze the environment, any external factors that are really important. This is not all about the organizing the internal structure. It's about how we can identify any external factors that could be at macro level. So anything, the contemporary issues, for example, how we are up to date with the current research, how we are up to date with the current issue that can have significant impact on our strategy and on our behavior and on our performance at the final level, and how we can cope with that, manage that, and to develop further. It's really important. Yeah.
Well, I'm just conscious we've actually only got a few minutes left, so I was going to do a little bit of a round robin, if that's okay, and just ask each of our speakers, including Claire, I'm going to put you on the spot, to sort of feedback what you think, your main, if you could give one bit of advice from today for our audience, what would it be and why? So I'm going to start with Dr. Edward, if that's okay.
Sure. I'm going back to that simple message of talking. It's something we're all able to do. We do not need specific training in it. We've done it since nearly we've been born. And talk to different people. Talk to businesses here in Wales that have exported to other countries, that have been successful. Learn how they did it. Talk to the advisors that we do have in Wales. Talk to the Development Bank, British Business Bank. Get advice from them, and then talk to international partners and people from different countries to learn more about them. So my tip for the day is talk.
Thank you very much. Dr. Mahshid, your top tip?
To start cultivating a global mindset by taking smaller steps, like reading international news, learning a language, connect with people from different countries, and then expand it by experience, like traveling or studying or working abroad or learning about different cultures to it can help you to challenge your assumption and expand your global worldview.
Brilliant, thank you for that. Dr. Claire?
I think my advice would be to develop your soft skills in terms of improving your cultural competence and cultural awareness. And with that in mind, we do have a CMI Wales workshop coming up in September, where we will be looking at developing these soft skills. So I thought I'd get that one in there.
Excellent, thank you. And last but not least, Laurence.
Well, my advice is to encourage the countries you're trying to do business in to come and visit your own country and share family. Families are a big topic in Asia, and be proud of your family. That doesn't mean your genetic family, it means your family business and everyone, and to bring them to Wales and show them the grass and the cows in our instance, and the sea, and just have a learning curve from their side as well to learn about Welsh culture.
So make it really human and connect.
Absolutely.
Level. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And finally, I shouldn't get a say, but I will anyway. I think, we have an advantage today we probably wouldn't have had, 10, 20, 30 years ago in terms of technology. I mean, today, for example, we've got people from all over the world joining this session. So the amount of resources we can access today is probably greater than any other point in history. So if you are an entrepreneur looking to start a business up and grow it internationally, or you are somebody looking for a job internationally, there are so many digital resources you can tap into first base and connect and link in with people and network with people. So there are opportunities for you. And as Claire's mentioned, if you want some building on soft skills, we've got a solution for you in August. So yeah, please do follow us on our LinkedIn page. Brilliant. Well, I think we're coming to the end of our session now. And I just want to say a massive thank you to our speakers, Laurence Harris, Dr. Edward Thomas Jones, and Dr. Mahshid Bagheri. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Diolch.
That's it for today's session. Thank you to all our speakers for your insight and expertise. Please stay tuned to hear more about CMI membership, and thank you for joining us.
Don't forget, as a CMI member, you can find the latest management and leadership insights at managers.org.uk. If you're not yet a member, join our community to discover CMI Confidence with on-demand resources, our network of mentors, and industry-leading accreditations.